And we are up for the SUSE QE Tools session. Hi, welcome everybody for the first session in year 2026. Today, what I would like to do with you is look back over the last year to do a retrospective of 2025. So I would be happy to hear from you how you experienced the last year regarding our work that we do, important changes, important lessons that you learned, looking back, any great achievements, maybe also some sad moments. Um, so what we could do first is what I prepared is we could take a look into some sagas that we have completed just to, I mean, we do that on a regular base, but just to have an overview of what bigger things have actually impacted us in the last year, maybe only the last year. Sometimes one remembers things as being more further in the past. But first, I took a look on our tools wiki page describing how we structure the tools group. And I was comparing the first state of 2025 against the current revision, which is from 17th of December last year. And we had quite a lot of changes on the wiki page, so you can see that from going from revision nearly 500 to 660, so more than 160 changes on the wiki page. That means that our wiki page is really quite dynamic and kept up to date, and it's also a base for work for us. And one change that's visible here is that in our team responsibilities, we have clarified that a template generator is something that we don't see within our team responsibility. The main reason is because that the main previous maintainer left the tools team and joined another squad within SUSE scope. Anton?
Amount of changes per year is interesting to know, but yeah, just maybe for the future, it's more clear what this value actually mean when you compare it, for example, with year 2024 and 2023, to see
Yeah,
if it's like something common that you're doing 100 changes per year, or
right.
maybe last year you did 200 changes and actually you are
That,
not so
that that's a good.
dynamic. Mm.
Yeah, right. So actually, let's take a look. So just to get a rough overview, in year 2024, we had been on something like 500 and then going down to 360. So yeah, I would say it was like that in before. Um, so I would say we are as dynamic as before, just counting from changes on the wiki page. And of course, this is not about anything like feature development or so, but that's a good point. All right, what else do we see? Well, the extreme programming side, which I really like, went down during that time. So that was a tiny sad moment. And you can see that, yeah, it's still not and will not be available, but the Wikipedia page is fine, so we changed that. And then one important point is that already in before we prepared and we internally made a split to have a QE dev team and a QE infra team. And within the last year, we published that properly here on the wiki page, and on more levels, we want to clarify that we actually have two separate so-called squads in SUSE QE terminology. So we have the QE dev and QE infra team. And same as with other QE squads, one can e really easily, without needing a change of contract or anything, switch from one squad to another. Just clarified with maybe the product owner, the scrum master, the line manager. Maybe in the QE tool scope, it would be even easier to do that. But as it as it was apparent in the past months, people actually do not want to or see the need to change that often. Where some said like, yeah, I want to do both because both is interesting, but people within the former tools team appreciate the better focus areas, and you can really see that because really most, if not all, people actually stay in their according team for much longer. I guess the main reason is because people really like to have a focus area and not be distracted by too much at a time. Still in the joint overarching team, we cover the same as in before, with the one exception which I mentioned before. So with that, the dev team is focusing on upstream OS ordnance and OpenQA development and related open source QA tooling and operating OpenQA on O3. And the QE infra team is caring about the QE infrastructure, which can, of course, also be OpenQA independent. But the main instance here that we care about, because it is big and so many people rely on it and so many processes rely on it, is OpenQA SUSE QE, but also caring about the operating system on many, many machines, including O3 itself. Also QMBot, QM dashboard, the internal QM dashboard instance, hardware compliance, etc. Or to describe it this way, any SUSE specific solutions. Anton?
What about Scrum rituals in this regard? Do you like work fully isolated one of each other, have separate stand-ups, separate planning, and so on, or you still have some, I don't know, once a month or whatever together meeting where you sync up, or you fully isolated?
Yeah, very
Please
good
elaborate.
question. So we have mostly separate meetings, but we still have joint ones. For example, the retrospective and the so-called fortnightly coordination, where we have some kind of roadmap overview and present the resolved task and review them and look into the planning for the next weeks. That one is still joined, as well as collaboration session, which where we say like we want to do some pair programming or collaboration with more people. There, it's basically depending on the topic and not on the team.
So you have a common backlog still, or two separate backlogs?
We have, and this is visible here, we have a joint team backlog, which is also what I work with as the product owner for both teams. But we do have separate backlogs and more. And so let's say over the past months, the work has really shifted so that commonly people really take a look into the individual backlogs. Okay? It's basically simple, like queries, combining those, but the separate backlogs are more prominent and more important.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, this is also linked on this page. We have this backlog status page, and how can I open it here like this? So this is what we work with as a status overview, and there you see also both linked. We have it combined backlog and the infra and dev, and we can see their separate sizes. All right, so let's take a look. What else changed? A bit of formatting, sure, why not? We have sometimes new projects, for example, Git SHA verify. So some time ago, that was actually before 2025, when we looked into common criteria compliant deployment of tooling. We developed a solution, let's say a SUSE internal solution, and by now this new project Git Verify on GitHub is more stable and more reliable, so it can also be used to control deployments in proper Python code with good test coverage, and it could also be helpful for other projects. So let's see. Um, yeah, we really haven't changed that much regarding the process, just clarified some numbers here. Um, this is a good reminder for myself. I was over the past time sending out weekly goals, team internal, so that we have some overarching goal based on a weekly cadence. And I think I lost a reminder, so this is good. And here you can see where we set up the split. So for the dailies, we have an infra daily and the dev daily. We have separate refinements. And then, of course, all the workshop topics updated. And then what we can take a look, and I don't want to go over all entries, but you can see that actually also the team composition changed significantly. Maybe not as significantly as it looks like, because this is also showing the split. We have me as product owner for both squads. We have Liv as the meta scrum master for both squads. And then in the dev team, we have Tina as the scrum master. And in the infra team, we have Robert as the scrum master. And then also old members as well as new members. So I'm happy to see that right now we have a bit bigger team so that we can actually cope with what we planned nicely. Some people join the team or being on squad rotation for the time being. Mm, maybe somewhere on the page that also mentions Sleep 16.0. Uh, No, it doesn't. Okay, that's fine, because we don't want to necessarily mention each individual specific operating system version. So, uh, guys, anything from you? What do you think are also important changes that impacted us, impacted our work over the past year? Would you like to share, or should we look over some of the sagas that we have complemented to help our memory? So let's see. Can I single out individuals from our team? Liv, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Cool. May I ask you, how was year 2025 for you?
Overall, pretty good, I think.
What do
There's
you
maybe
remember as the most noteworthy, impactful changes?
so impactful, I would definitely say was when we were looking at Gitty.
Okay.
Not only because we started embracing outages with O3, which is, I think,
Yeah.
at least coinciding with that. And maybe in a positive, seeing great work improving the infrastructure there and making things more resilient. But also actually moving towards using Git for things, I guess, touched a lot of pieces everywhere. So that is definitely impactful. Maybe one more challenging thing as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, because this is also was what I remember started pretty much at the beginning of the last year, and then there were some workshops in early spring when also the impact on the SLE maintenance workflows were discussed and how to adapt the tooling for that. And in the same time, also more projects on OBS switched to use the Gitty base, also impacting us. And then we have now the, for example, devil languages Perl um, on a Git based, which impacts us a lot, as well as how we submit changes to a Gitty based project like Leap 16.0, which was released in autumn of last year. And in before, of course, we wanted to set up our tooling so that we can submit new versions of OpenQA and also audience and dependencies to Leap 15.6 using the, I would say, legacy workflows, as well as Leap 16.0 for with the new Gitty-based workflows. And what you mentioned is related to this saga here, and we can also see by color that it's red, so it's high priority. So this is still, I want to say haunting us. No, it's guiding us in our daily work still. And I would say we are maybe somewhere in the middle. Yeah, we are far from having that fully covered, but also we are already progressed very far from not knowing how this will impact us at all. So yeah,
And I
so
think it's fair to say it's really because it impacts different distributions, as also mentioned there. It impacts SUSE related things and impacts OpenSUSE. It impacts to an extent our own OpenQA and OpenQA industry, right?
yes, yes,
So I think that's why we feel this in multiple places.
yeah, right. So this is ongoing. Looking at the sagas that we actually completed, actually, let's sort this by closed. Nope, the other way around. So at the beginning of the last year, we concluded the Linux Endpoint Protection Agent deployment within QE infrastructure. And as the name says, QE infrastructure, meaning this is not just OpenGA, but actually much more about like 50 to 100 machines which are used within the scope of QE. And we needed to ensure that this is deployed and rolled out and also monitored accordingly on all relevant resources where applicable, because of course there are testing machines where this is not applicable, but we needed to find this definition as well, and then we needed to organize it with um, parties to make sure that everybody got the memo, and either we deploy it ourselves or that people who own their own separate hardware also do that. Then we concluded a rather old saga, which is only like 5 digits. And yeah, we could conclude that at the beginning of the year. And I vaguely remember that at the time I really wanted to get this done. And looking at the date, I think this was also a good call, because then we could really say we conclude one topic. Of course, there are always some ideas which don't end up completed in there and need to be postponed or planned for later. But this freed us to focus on other stories like what you mentioned about the Gitty saga. Similar for the compliance, which is also what was impacting us already greatly during the year 2024, and then in 2025 we needed to cover the loose ends and make sure that we are really sustainable. So something like we cannot just forever pin to a stable version of a software, but we need to repeatedly deploy updates, and how to do that in a secure and compliant fashion was one of the open points. Yeah, then the OpenK for SUSE customers ending up in also multiple quality of life improvements, and then the more recent one about the reliable and resilient QA infrastructure management, also keeping in mind that we have, well, I would say like a near continuous change is a guarantee, as in there are always some hardware that needs to be moved around or restructuring in the network, hardening of the traffic rules, as well as new machines being added to the pool for more up-to-date requirements regarding testing, as well as fading out old machines. And stable testing on IPMI backend. I mean, granted, this was mostly some cleanup by me so that we could actually conclude that saga, which is by the number even older than the full version control awareness. Most of the work had been done in previous years, not in the last year. But still we managed to come up with some improvements. So one addition which I managed to contribute myself there was that we could actually finally understand how on a true Linux device, so not like X11 or Valent terminal where you would have Xterm or console or something, but what we more commonly use in OpenQA console tests that don't or cannot use a true zero terminal, like, so, the Linux TTY, which is at least used initially in some tests. And there was still the problem with key repetition errors because it's actually not that straightforward to disable key repetition, like, you hold down a key on a keyboard and then after some waiting time, multiple characters repeat, which is maybe nice for a human operator, but for a remote entity controlling thousands of virtual machines every single day, which might be under bigger load, in particular on AH64, that was a big problem, causing sporadic, annoying issues. And the feature and support to have stable tests is all in. There are some open points still regarding how to actually configure the OpenGame machine definitions and the specific test suits, and also in some cases like where you have special UEFI var selection where this isn't compatible to do. So those need to be handled individually. Those are still open points, but in principle, the stability features are there. Any questions or additions for the sagas that we see here? Anton?
Sorry, maybe I was not listening very good, but have you said something about OpenKI for SUSE customers? It looks
Yeah.
interesting.
Yes, so if you're interested in more details, what we have there, we also had a workshop session for that. Initially, that was started to have a more tailored offering of OpenQA, actually plus Osado for SUSE customers. For us, the important result was that we have OpenQA continuously submitted to the current versions of Leap as well as Package Hub. And that means that you don't need any development repositories to have a recent and stable auth audience and OpenQA on SLE or Leap. So that is available, as well as improving the quality, improving the code coverage of OpenQA itself so that we have a stable development base, as well as streamlining support for additional implementation languages for tests. In particular, the request was we would like to write test code in Python, and that is possible. By now, we can also actually do that in Lua code. And so those are the results that will stay and are relevant for the future.
Do you know some particular SUSE customers who use OpenQA? Some
I
real
cannot
cases?
comment on that. That's yeah, that's something that we can discuss internally.
Okay.
But we know of some people, some communities, some partners, and some customers using OpenGame.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else for this, Biatus? So, any other noteworthy results from you looking back over the last year? What has changed? How did we do? Maybe looking forward, what can we do for the future? Well, if not, then we can conclude here. But the next workshop topic can be very much related. So on the 23rd of January, in 2 weeks from now, I would like to review the product vision with you, which is also on our wiki page. And that one wasn't changed for quite some time. So we can remind ourselves of what the product vision is and as necessary, actually update it. Janis?
Yeah, maybe I worth mention that we start um, experimenting with AI and the MCP.
Uh-huh, yeah,
Looking forward to it.
exactly.
And I have one kind of not negative, but because usually we are talking about what we do. Uh, like I feel like we had so much work and we focus in so many other things like the Kiembot, which
Hmm.
um, left behind some things features in OpenQA like the Helm charts and stuff, which is it for me it's a little bit weird to have something that actually doesn't really it's production ready for
Yeah, um, yes, you're right. I share your feeling there. So that definitely happened that we needed to switch our focus to some areas which are, let's say, which look mm, less relevant for the future and also not that much relevant for the products that we build in general, but are more specific and tailored solutions. So I'm hoping or I'm planning also to um, put more focus on those areas again. So, you know, in every saga, we are looking for not just, let's say, a fix for today, but also an improvement for the future. So this is what I hope will come out of all of them. I mean, the last one, support SUSE Prague Office smooth while ensuring business continuity. I mean, this is maybe the least candidate where we would say, after all, I mean, sure, after all, we will have much better base, but this is like SUSE internal story, right? For the other two, I hope that we are also gaining something really for the future. After that, looking at the next tickets as well. Let me group by target version. So you mentioned AI, and this is actually a saga which is on our next backlog. So what is planned to come afterwards. And I hope that, I mean, we did something. There is an MCP endpoint 403. We, let's say, we started, but we can do so much more, and I hope that we can do that. Anton?
Sorry, because it was not really clear what Yanis said. I also not really clear understand your reply. Just to rephrase Yanis' question, if I get it right, he was saying that team was concentrated on hot fixes instead of doing something properly.
No, 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 no. My impression, it's personal impression that the work this year was a silent improvement
Yeah.
in things that we were forced to do. So we had to left some things behind.
Yeah. So it's not like the whole year was full of hot fixes. But I mean, you can actually see that also in the something like the OpenGA GitHub repository. I think the OpenGA GitHub repository was actually receiving much less changes than in previous years. Okay, uh, let's see if we can see that when we look over the last 24 months. So yeah, well, at least what one can see is that in the second half of 2025 here, there was a decrease of contributions. So a decrease of commits means given that we have more or less the same resources in before, we had less time to help improve OpenGA itself, but we were busy with other things which are not that visible. I agree. Well,
I see that bots are doing a lot of work in your project.
yes, right. We try to do that. So it's great to see Dependabot and Mergify helping out a lot. And actually, I can show you other projects where this is even way more prominent. So the QM dashboard, this is a project where, yeah, you can see who is doing all the work, right? This is Dependabot and nobody else doing anything here. Yeah, but at least so this is keeping the system up to date. And I mean, it depends also a bit on what you actually include in the source control system and whatnot. Yeah. Okay. So, Janis, so this is, I agree with your point. This is a good point. So let's see if we can incorporate that into the review of the product vision. And if not, maybe remind me also during the roadmap session that we shouldn't be dragged into things that we are, as you phrased it, forced to do, but actually some things which also matter for the future. All right. Anything else by anyone? Seems like not. So we're good. Thank you all for attending and see you again next time. Goodbye.